Welcome to the Talk Like a Leader podcast, where we explore the mindset, skill set, and habit set of leadership communication. Using these tips, techniques, and tactics, you'll be able to talk like a leader to build better relationships and get more done. Your host is Guy Harris, who has more than 20 years of combined professional and military experience in consulting, coaching, and training in areas like team and interaction dynamics, communication strategies and tactics, as well as emotional intelligence. Take it away, Guy.
Hi, this is Guy Harris. Welcome to the Talk Like a Leader podcast. This week's episode is titled More Than Technique, The Importance of Character. Chris Brady and Orrin Woodward wrote a book called Launching a Leadership Revolution, which is a book I recommend you put on your leadership reading list. And in that book, they introduce a concept they call the trilateral leadership ledger. That's a mouthful. And basically, it's a way to estimate total leadership effectiveness. Now, the ledger they introduce includes three components. They say that a leader's effectiveness is determined by task, relationship, and character. Task meaning their ability to get things done. Relationship meaning their ability to build and protect relationships. And then character, which is the main topic of today's episode. The trilateral leadership ledger that's introduced by Brady and Woodward is a multiplicative scorecard. And here's what that means. Each of the three components, task, relationship, and character, are evaluated on a 0 to 10 scale. And frankly, that's a little bit arbitrary. It's a conceptual thing. I don't know that you can necessarily easily come up with what 0 to 10 means, but I think you get the idea. 0 meaning you have no capability in that area, 10 meaning you're awesome in that area. Now, all three are multiplied together to give you a total leadership effectiveness score. So it's basically a 0 to 1,000 scale. So if you had 1 in all three of the areas, you were a 1 on task, 1 on relationship, and 1 on character, meaning you were barely doing anything, you would get a score of 1 on the leadership scale. If you were a 10, meaning you were amazing in all three areas, you were amazing at getting things done, and you were amazing at building and protecting relationships, and you had absolutely impeccable character, you would get a 10 times 10 times 10 score, or 1,000, on the leadership scale. Here's what that means also. A 0 in any category gives you a 0 on the leadership scale. So if you're great at getting things done, and you're terrible at relationships, you get a 0, and you have great character, you get a 0. If you are great at task and great at relationship and have a terrible character score, meaning 0, you get a 0. So a 0 in any of the three components gives you a 0 net leadership effectiveness score. So let's dig into this character idea a little bit, and I'll make a sidebar comment about the trilateral leadership ledger. I don't know if you buy the idea that all three of them are multiplicative exactly as defined and exactly as scoped out in the book. I think you probably agree with me that conceptually it's at least directionally the right idea. So let's look at character for a minute, topic of today's podcast episode. Character really has multiple definitions, and the definition from the Merriam-Webster dictionary that fits the context we're talking about today is that character is defined as moral excellence and firmness. And while we could definitely debate the attributes I'm going to list, I'm going to say that for my purposes today, I'm going to say that character includes things like honesty, integrity, courage, having proper values, having some humility, having some patience with others, having self-discipline, self-mastery, and self-control. And I don't know if you agree with those, and I'm not even going to argue that's a perfect list. I think we probably would generally agree on the list and say that a person who does well in the honesty category and has integrity and is courageous and has good, proper values and is humble enough to not belittle and humiliate others and has patience with others and is self-disciplined and they do the best they can to control themselves, probably, you and I would agree, would evaluate them as having high character. And here's the point of today's episode. If I want to talk like a leader, I have to not only develop skills and techniques, I have to not only develop my mindset, I have to also develop my character. I have to move in the direction of being a person who's honest and has integrity and is courageous and has good, proper values and has humility and the list of things that I talked about already. Because if I don't demonstrate good character, people probably won't listen to me, and I will damage my leadership effectiveness. So building character is critical to building leadership. And building and demonstrating character is critical to talking like a leader. Because talking like a leader, without being perceived as a leader, is really rather pointless. A mentor of mine gave me this phrase one time. He said, "I'd rather hear a man say he'd done something when he actually did it than hear a man say he did something when he ain't done nothing." The point being that if the man is honest and you can trust what he says, then his technique probably could be a little bit sloppy, and it'd be okay. Or as Ralph Waldo Emerson said, "Your actions speak so loudly, I cannot hear what you're saying." You've probably heard that before. And so it says our actions have to match our words, or our words mean nothing. Abraham Lincoln said, "Nearly all men can handle adversity, but if you really want to test a man's character, give him power." So how a person handles their authority, how they handle their leadership position, demonstrates their character. I would argue that leadership doesn't create character in the person, it does reveal their character. Another quote or another thought that this is actually a thread of quotes. I was unable to find the exact perfect origin of this idea. As near as I can tell, the idea traces back to Charles Spurgeon, who was an English preacher, in an 1876 sermon. And the actual quote from Spurgeon is pretty long, so I won't quote it today. I'll take two more modern summaries of Spurgeon's sermon. One is by Malcolm Forbes. He's a publisher of Forbes magazine. He was the son of the founder, B.C. Forbes, so he was a longtime publisher of Forbes magazine. And he said, "You can easily judge the character of a man by how he treats those who can do nothing for him." Or Paul Eldridge, who's a novelist, said, "A man's character is most evident by how he treats those who are not in a position either to retaliate or reciprocate." I don't know for sure that you evaluate the leaders you follow based on your estimation of their character, or if you buy the idea of the trilateral leadership ledger and how it impacts a leader's effectiveness. I am guessing that it at least figures a little bit in your estimation of leaders and your willingness to follow them. I'm also pretty confident that most people, whether they think of it consciously or not, do use their estimation of a leader's character as they make decisions about listening to or following the leader's direction. And I think the general concept that the combined impact of character development, task accomplishment, and relationship skill affect a leader's effectiveness is true, even if you don't accept the exact definition and parameters defined by the Trilateral Leadership Ledger and Brady and Woodward's book. So here's my encouragement for today. As you work to develop your leadership communication techniques and skills, as you work to find new ways to think about and convey your ideas in a leadership role, remember to also invest the time, effort, and energy necessary to develop your character so that you'll be perceived as a person of character and listened to as a person of character. If you'll do that, you can talk like a leader. This has been the Talk Like a Leader podcast. You can listen to this show every week wherever you get your podcast. If you haven't, be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. I'm Guy Harris, and thanks for listening.